Will you pray with me? O God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. He didn't lie about much, at least in my introduction. He didn't tell you everything. He didn't tell you, actually, that I'm from a family of 6 siblings. And I'm old enough to have lived during the day when family vacations meant that you got into the family station wagon and drove across country to visit family. For me, that meant we drove from California to Virginia. Yeah, right, 6 kids in a station wagon. Yes, 6 long days in the car when the highlights were looking for license plates that would come from different states. Some of you know that game, yeah. Or the highlight was to watch for the vacancy sign for the motel in the front of the hotel, right, or the motel. And the swimming pool in the back, it had to have a swimming pool. But even with those highlights, when those days were so long and they were backed up one against the other, well, inevitably someone in the car would say, "Are we there yet?" Yeah. Are we there yet? That actually is my response to the reading from Isaiah that Patty read for us a moment ago. You remember that passage. You know that passage. It's a beautiful passage of a wonderful place, a place where everything is made new, where people live long lives, where there is no weeping and no distress, where the vineyards are full and the fruit plentiful, where everyone has a place to feel safe, to lay down their heads, to call home, where work is enjoyable and productive, when prayers are heard before they're even spoken, where there is a place where we are known and where we are loved and where there is peace. Can you imagine that for a minute? Imagine that place. That's a place where we all want to go, right? And not just for vacation, but we want to live there. We want it to be our permanent home. And doggone it if we aren't there yet. We are not. But we want to go there, don't we? We want to go there. Although, I don't know, apparently in Isaiah's vision, there will be no more steaks or chicken nuggets. Did you catch that? Yeah, right? Even the lions will give up their carnivorous ways. This new heaven and new earth that Isaiah speaks about beckons back to the first creation, where the divine produced green plants for all of the creatures to eat. But I would miss a good steak. I haven't always liked steak. I lived in Wyoming, though, for 7 years, and I discovered that the way my mother would ordinarily cook steak, which was very well done and resembled leather, was not the best way to cook steak. Wyomingites know how to cook steak. I would miss steaks. And the truth is, I can't really imagine some of those parts of this vision Isaiah shares with us. It seems a little bit out of the ordinary, beyond possibility, really. It's the whole idea of peace between lions and oxen, wolves and lambs. That just is impossible because, that's their nature. Lions eat oxen and wolves hunt lambs. This vision is beautiful, but it's just so different from the world in which we live. In our world, there are lions and oxen. There are wolves and lambs. There are the rich and the poor. There are the privileged and the marginalized. There are the victors and the losers. There are the powerful and the oppressed, the colonialist and the indigenous, the captors and the enslaved. There are the whites and the people of color. There are the Jewish people and anti-Semitics. I can only say I'm sorry that this is the world we live in. Anti-Semitic flyers have been distributed on campuses as propaganda and mailed to Jewish-owned businesses as threats. Swastikas are carved into trees and slurs are painted on synagogues. A bomb threat was called into a Jewish community center and yeshiva students were attacked outside their school. And these are just some of what has happened in the United States in the last 2.5 weeks. I know I don't have to tell you this. This is our world. Predators and survivors. It was Isaiah's world too, though. Isaiah's world, there were the Assyrians and the kingdom of Israel, the Babylonians, and the kingdom of Judah. And in the midst of this reality, Isaiah had his dream. Isaiah had his dream right in the middle of the world that was so messy and so far from what he dreamt. A new creation, he called it. It would have to be that. A new creation that would be so extraordinary. It should spark imagination. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. called it a beloved community. And in King's vision, he says, poverty, hunger, and homelessness will not be tolerated because international standards of human decency will not allow it. Racism in all its forms of discrimination, bigotry, and prejudice is replaced by an all-inclusive spirit of sisterhood and brotherhood. Dr. King's beloved community, it's just as beautiful as Isaiah's vision. But it is not a utopian goal, though. Dr. King, in the King Sitter website, actually says, it is not to be confused with the rapturous image of lions and lambs coexisting in idyllic harmony. I appreciate Dr. King's recognition that the conflict is just part of the human experience. In the backseat of the family car on these long driving vacations, there were the occasional outbursts. Mom, she's hogging all the Chex Mix. Dad, he won't share, she won't share the Etch-a-Sketch. And pretty soon, I'd be calling my brother a wolf and he'd be calling me a lamb. He'd be claiming he was the lamb. And some people would say that that's just human nature. But Dr. King believed that conflicts could be resolved peacefully and adversaries could be reconciled. No conflict, he believed, needed to erupt in violence. Rather, conflict could end with reconciliation where adversaries cooperate in the spirit of freedom and goodwill. Mom and Dad would let the bickering in the back go on for as long as possible, which was until we were about to come to blows. But then they'd pull over the car and stop at the nearest rest stop, and we'd get out of the car, we'd run around for a little bit just to play. More often than not, my brother would admit that he was bored with the Etch-a-Sketch, and I could have it when we got back in the car. And I would admit that my tummy hurt because I ate too much Chex Mix. Conflict is inevitable, but it is also a necessary part of the human experience precisely because we are not there yet. We are not there in that vision of Isaiah's or Dr. King's. And we have not always been cognizant of the tears and the distress of our siblings. And we need to be called out on the way in which we are ignoring our part in causing or perpetuating pain. But we don't have to be defensive. We shouldn't be defensive. Not if we really want to get to the place where Isaiah envisioned and Dr. King dreamt of it. Because lions, wolves, oxen, and lamb all inhabit this big, beautiful world, and it is not in their nature to take more than they need. And brothers really don't want to leave their sisters behind at the gas station when they stop to get gas. And it really doesn't work if only a few of us get there. It really isn't the vision unless we all go together. It is hard to imagine, but maybe that's the problem. Maybe we lack imagination to see past the way the world just creates winners and losers, to see past the us versus them, the normal and those we other. Maybe we lack imagination to see how to converse with kindness and listen with humility. Maybe we lack imagination to see the next leg of the trip on our long journey getting there. And perhaps, maybe just perhaps, we had forgotten to celebrate the moments of peace in the back seat, or to recognize the value of a little play and some running around at the rest stop, or to appreciate the nice, cool swim in the evenings at the motel. Oh, I know that there are all sorts of conflicting ideas on how we will get to where we dream of going. I know there are plenty of conspiracy theories and fake news stories and alternative facts that make the journey uneven and halted at times. But 42 years ago, at the time of our very first interfaith Thanksgiving service, we celebrated the holiday we called Columbus Day, without even a notice or a broad awareness of the insensitivity of that term. 42 years ago, we used the phrase colorblind, thinking that that was a good thing to be. 42 years ago, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 had yet to be fleshed out. It took a while, didn't it? It took a while. There wasn't yet the Violence Against Women Act, and there wasn't a Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act, or the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. 42 years ago, the Supreme Court had yet to articulate that Jewish citizens are protected under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But today, we are all there in those moments. We aren't fully there yet. But look back. We have taken some distance, and the distance we have taken is worth celebrating. Look back, but don't go back. Don't go back. Don't go back. Keep your eyes on the road. And to use a phrase that was popular in the days of the family vacations arriving in the station wagon, keep on trucking. Amen.